if we have been telling people for 20 years to not leave their machines unlocked for 10 seconds while they go to the toilet, or to not do these things with passwords, and to, if we keep telling them the same thing, I mean, I'm getting so bored of it. They must be going nuts. They probably aren't. They probably are like this. We're not listening. You weird security people. You think that like Russia or China or North Korea are going to come after me, but actually I'm Joe Smith from Hull, and all I want to do is go to the chippy and buy a bag of chips with my iPhone. Like, I think we've got a huge communication problem, and I might be wrong about that, but the stuff we talk about is not new. It's not novel. Um, the risk landscape has changed hugely.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the 401 Access Denied podcast. I'm your host for the episode, Joe Carson. Pleasure to be here. Really excited. And we're always bringing really interesting, amazing, talented people who really are doing loads to make the world a safer place. So I'm joined with an awesome guest today. We have met quite a few years ago, interestingly, in a bar. But I'm joined by Dan. So Dan, over to you to give us a little bit of background about yourself, what you do, what things you get up to, and what things you do to make the world a safer place.
Cool. Hey, thanks, Joe. I'm Dan. If you don't already know me, I am a consultant. I specialize in helping organizations improve their security postures and better enable them businesses through technology. Right. Nice and simple on that one.
Nice and simple. Any interesting, fun things about yourself? Any things that?
I mean, what I also do is I do a lot of tweets, and I'm a professional tweeter, I think the expression is. But
I think you got an award for professional tweeter, was it? Most entered.
It's pretty cool. I do a lot of stuff, right? So I do lots of community work. I do lots of like threat intelligence. I do weird mad honeypots and spend loads of money on friends at Microsoft, keep them employed. I look at how we can better enable ourselves to defend against digital threats that we face in ways that I think people think we do already, but that actually aren't quite done in the same way. So I try and help people and share what I know or my learning experiences, because I don't know that much. So I try and share online what I do. As best as possible, because what I do is very odd. Everyone always asks me, "What do you do?" And I'm like, "I do cyber stuff." But I try and take what I've learned from the last 20 odd years in industry, and what I do from a research and from a fun point of view. I'm really lucky in the sense that I got a job that's my hobby. So basically,
likewise, which is our good thing, and also can be our evil as well.
Yeah. I mean, I don't. I said someone earlier. I said that my business is very odd. It's niche. I set up a microservices company, so it's a similar model to large companies. It's just that it's me and a load of robots in a server room, software, and someone said it's like an intelligence network, but me and my mates, as I call it, and doing stuff to try and help people. So looking at how we can look at countries to see if we can make them safer. How do we help protect hospitals? How do we help protect critical services? And how do we do weird and wonderful things that may or may not work, right? Because you never get innovation or improvement by doing what someone else has done. You need to be looking into things and spaces and ideas that are new, novel, and often fail. So you end up spending lots of time doing weird stuff and going, "Oh, that doesn't work."
You are a real life James Bond, aren't you?
Yeah. I mean, I tell everyone I'd have to kill them, right? It is funny. I think that's a great, the James Bond thing's funny. I obviously am a massive James Bond fan.
Absolutely.
That's not exactly.
I couldn't tell that at all.
Also, because real life and films are completely different, aren't they? So if we sat there and I'm like, "Oh, what am I doing today?" I do a lot of work on my own. I might be working with people, but I work with myself. So I tend to find that if I'm going to share content or stories or do things that are interesting, it's a lot better to make them more interesting than they are, right? If I said to someone, "Oh, what we're going to go and do today is we're going to dump 1 million logs, and we're going to sit there and stare through spreadsheets and not know what we're doing because we don't know what we're looking at until we looked at it, and we might find something," then it doesn't sound so as fun, does it? So I think
if people really knew, I always love the picture about the memes that shows you what your parents think you do, what your friends think you do, what reality you do. And I can't tell you how much of my life I've spent looking at log files and just mundane having two screens side by side and just comparing numbers and looking for lost data, looking for duplication of something, sitting and looking for basically, hashes and UIDs and GUIDs.
Or a typo in a bloody username, right?
It's just. But the thing is, a lot of times, it's great. Fast forward to today, there's a lot of automation that can do things, much faster, than maybe 10, 15 years ago when you had to do a lot of it manually. You bring up one thing I just want to go back onto. You mentioned a bit about hospitals and making the world. Can you talk a little bit about CV19? Because I think that was important. Yourself and Lisa kind of introduced the CV19 was back at the start of COVID. If you can give the audience a little bit of a background of what CV19 was, why it started, and what the motives and intentions was.
Yeah, so right, to go back in sort of my thought process, when the pandemic started, I sat there and I was like, oh, this could be quite bad. People might be like, why was it? Obviously it's bad. It's not, but from a digital point of view, from a cybersecurity perspective. So in 2017, I responded to WannaCry inside the trust. And I've done quite a bit of work for the NHS, and I've traveled over hundreds of businesses over the last 20 odd years. Mm-hmm. So I've got some idea, and I've done this to huge and small orgs. I've got some idea about what the world looks like, probably. At least I hope I have. Some people may think I'm mad, but so I sat there and I was like, oh, what happens if I ransomware? I don't mean me, but like if a hospital gets ransomware during a pandemic when there's no beds or all these other kind of problems. And it was a real moment of uncertainty, I think, in the world. I think all of us felt like, crap, what's happening? Like, this is not, we're not allowed to leave our houses. This is like a bloody film. This is like being in Contagion. And so I sat there and it was me, Lisa, and Rad online. I'm not even going to get trying to remember the exact route, but I basically was just we should get some bags together and put some laptops aside and get ready to go in if we need to, right?
Yeah.
Because that's literally what happened in WannaCry, right? I got a phone call and I ended up in a hospital. It wasn't like I wasn't sitting there waiting for it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So we did that, and then suddenly there was loads of interest. And we had this conversation online in public, I think, or part of it in public.
Yep.
And it went from that concept of we should prepare because we didn't think, our guess was, have people really prepared for this kind of event? I mean, it's like a zombie film, isn't it? So I would say no.
It was indeed. It was me being based in Estonia, it was a little bit different from the rest of the world. Yes, we had, of course, the same restrictions as everybody else. But here, we tend to do a lot of things online digitally anyway. And 2 meters is sometimes for Estonians is a little bit closer than they actually prefer to be anyway. So we're here, they actually was glad when the restrictions lifted because then they could go back to the normal distances of 10 meters apart. But here everything was done digitally. So, even schools and, healthcare, a lot of the things were done digitally. But it really highlighted a lot of the things, I think, around supply chains was probably the biggest issue here of getting things, the supply chain interruption, getting, goods and getting food and energy and all those things. There started to be the big realization of how dependent you are on supply chain. But I think, even the UK, I think, had similar challenges as well, getting stock of even medicines and getting people, maintenance and stuff as well.
So this was the kind of thought process in my head, right? I was like, oh, okay. And plus, it sounds stupid, but I think I wasn't on a project at the time. So I was sitting there going, oh, I haven't got I was like, I can't really go out to a sales lunch anymore. But yeah, so we sat there and we're like, okay, what should we do? And then it's it got a lot of interest. It was in Forbes, Wired, and we had thousands of people watching it. and that creates its own challenge in itself. But so essentially, like my initial view was like prep for instant response support, get people that are vetted professionals, as in my friends, right? Without being silly about it, get some of my friends together and get some. I was like, cool, like we can get the kit ordered if we need to. We've probably already got all the kit anyway because of what we do for jobs, and just be available and set up a network to do that. But as it obviously got bigger in terms of like interest and stuff like that, we ended up doing threat intelligence. We did some advisory work. I'm going to like trying to volunteer cybersecurity services in a actionable, meaningful, useful way. It's incredibly difficult. So like it's difficult when I'd have hundreds of people message me asking if they can help, but they don't know what to do and even to the point they're like, I'm not even sure what I can do. So it's really difficult from a logistics point of view alone. So what we try to do is like, we tried to do stuff that gave out advice. We tried to encourage. My message to people was generally like, you don't need permission to volunteer. Go out to your doctors and GP surgeries. Go and speak to like your trusts and etc. But also we ended up doing lots of like I did some vulnerability analysis at scale, trying to look at how where their weaknesses, and then working out how we can try and solve those problems. So that we had different people working on different bits. My stuff was very much less talking to people.
I thought it was something that, when I saw, and seen the intelligence sharing that was going between people in order to be very proactive, and rather than waiting for things to happen, about sharing what they were seeing elsewhere and hoping that other hospitals and other practices would be able to take those and put controls or put mitigation in place before it spread. Because WannaCry was very reactive, everyone was kind of rushing, but for me, it was, it was what we should be doing as a community, as sharing intelligence and sharing knowledge and sharing experiences. So I felt that if something that this was for realization when I saw the CV19 and I saw the amount of information what people were contributing. I think the intelligence piece for me was really impressive, because it's what we should be doing as an industry. We should be more open and not afraid. Sometimes I get worried, like security researchers like ourselves, when we share stuff, all of a sudden, you sometimes get, maybe, people look at it from a criminal perspective. You were working on some type of exploit, and now all of a sudden, organizations or, law enforcement, I think that we should not be afraid, and the law should protect those. It all comes down to the motives. It all comes down to what your intentions are. Are your intentions to protect the system by sharing information, or are you looking, alternative motives for financial base, or for, so it gets into one of the things that I want to get. So from your experiences with that, which I think is impressive and is fantastic to see, who is the real adversaries? Who was it? Who was really attacking us? Is it? I mean, should I be worried about somebody hacking into my home and stealing laptops, or should I be worried about somebody getting into my phone or losing devices, or should I be worried about going for a pee break when I'm on a train and not having to pack everything up and bring it into the toilet with me? Should I be worried about the Russians and Chinese, or hovering satellites and following me everywhere I go? Who is the real adversaries? What is the threat out there? What's the most likely thing that will happen? And what's the least likely thing?
Okay, so the first caveat on all of that, like, it depends who you are, where you are, what you're doing. There are a lot of variables. So for the purpose of answering this, I am talking about the average everyday citizen. I'm not talking about someone who works for defense, who works in a VIP role, or a high net worth individual. All of that stuff, that's not the majority. So I'm just going to caveat that, because
everyday working citizen, who's somebody who's
like,
working at a supermarket, or who's driving a bus, or a taxi driver, the hairdresser,
someone who's not of particular interest in terms of, like, they haven't got state secrets or any weird security research sitting in their pockets they don't want someone to take. I think that, like, the biggest threat, I would say, to I'll use myself as an example of this, right? My biggest threat's me. Like, I am definitely going to be losing something way, way, way before someone's going to be coming up and probably stealing something from me. I mean, it's really odd, isn't it? So, like, I did some stuff, and it's online, so this isn't like it's news to the world. Like, I'm open with the research I do and with the fun conversations I have. I sat there looking at it, and I was like, okay, like, if I'm a normal person, which I am, so like I might be a little bit more beefed up on the security front, but that kind of makes not too many odds in the sense of what I'm thinking about.
We're a little bit more, let's say, conscious about about things,
Yeah, I mean, like,
around us than the average person.
if you can pwn my mail, I'm not asking anyone to try, by the way, unless you're a friend, DM me, that's okay. Like, if you can, I've got an Office 365 E5 license, right? I've got MFA, I've got conditional access, I've got everything logged, I've got like a decent security score. Like, that stuff is hard to get into. Not impossible, but if you're remote and you're trying to pwn my mailbox, you're probably not going to, right? That's probably where it is from a hardening, at least I hope so. Whereas the average citizen doesn't have that, right? Like, so you're going to get fished, right? That's like, I think it's like almost guaranteed if you operate on the
every
internet.
day. Every
Right?
day. I mean, I've got all my alias emails set up, and they're just nonstop. The moment you subscribe to one thing, it's only a matter of time before that gets on a opportunistic target list that they just basically bombard it with. And some of it's legitimate marketing, some of it's legitimate sales. They're just trying to get your information. They're trying to get you to do something. They're trying to get you to a good deal. And then a very small amount of it, does get into, where is a phishing attempt. I think some of the impressive ones that I've seen recently are the ones that look like, you get an email saying your account looks like it has suspicious activity. Did you log on from this location? I mean, they're getting pretty good. And for the average person looking at that, I don't think that they would be able to tell the difference between the real and the fake one.
I mean, I don't understand, right? This I think is nuts. Our security messaging has been for many years, don't click on dodgy links. How would you know? Right? Like, obviously we get some scammers who are terrible at they don't do any real targeting, they don't use a native language person, they use sloppy tradecraft. It's crap, right? They're just throwing stuff out onto the wall, and they're probably still getting hits because that's life. But like, it's not that difficult. If you want to start upgrading your like phishing capability, what you do is you sign up as a legitimate customer, get yourself a password reset link, or try and hack your own bank account and get an alert, and then you copy it. So, I mean, I know big trade secrets I've just given away there.
Well, that's I mean, that's the techniques, is you want to get it to look as legitimate as possible by having them, by replicating the same experience you would get as signing up for something, so that they will see all the same details.
I mean, I know I obviously don't do this, so bear with the phrasing I'm using is just like common language rather than me. But like, if you're going to go and steal stuff, I'm like, cool, let's go and visit your brand. I'm going to email you. I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to steal all your footers. I'm going to steal your PowerPoints, your Word documents. I'm going to help. I mean, I would actually, if it was a local area, I would go somewhere if I needed to. But like, you can digitally online, like, just try and yoink as many assets as possible.
Yeah.
And then you're going to craft your wares. I got told off by Rick for saying craft, so I don't know what to say. It's for beer, so you're going to put together this stuff, and I think that the messaging around like being able to spot stuff, I've got a view which, and again, language is odd because people read it in different ways or hear it in different ways. I don't really care what people click on, right? Personally, because I'm sitting in a world where if I've designed and built a computer platform that everything goes to shit if you click on a link, I've failed, right?
It's a very bad design. You might as well. I mean, the thing is that the internet and it was created to click on. The application we used to actually interface into that world, the browser, was made to click on. We're all using our fingers and mouses or whatever it is to interact with that. And it's to click on things. It's to type in stuff and click on things. So to tell people to be careful about, don't click on those things, but click on these things, and how to tell the difference. Absolutely. I mean, when we are depending on the people to make the best security decisions possible, we're in a failure at that point. We're not going to be successful.
Yeah, and I think some people anyway, I think because we've brainwashed the world into hearing things like rotate passwords every 30 days, have 8 characters with uppercase, lowercase, and all that crap, which doesn't work. And we tell people, oh, don't do this, deploy MFA because it's really easy. It's not easy to deploy MFA. I'm not saying don't do it, but I've gone to taxi drivers while I'm in the taxis, or I've gone to family members, and I can tell you this. They are not sitting there going, Dan, this is really fun. I really, really want to do this. They're like, Dan, I use the same password for my mobile. I've got no PIN code on it. I've got the same password for Facebook. And like all this stuff, like generally speaking, they want to do the thing, not protect the thing. They are not security consultants. They're not pen testers. They're not thinking like they've got like the NSA or the CIA or the GRU or FSB after them.
And they're not too worried about having TikTok on their phone either.
They don't care. Literally, this is my experience of speaking to people. I do that a lot. That's I think a useful skill in life. Most people say to me, who are not in the spy games, as it were, like they're like, Dan, I've not got any money. Dan, what's someone going to do? They're probably not going to be able to do that much to me. Like, I haven't got millions of pounds in my account. Okay, my Facebook bit gets hacked. I just create a new account. Like, I don't think the impact levels, they can be wrong. Again, we're looking at a curve, aren't we? Yeah. I don't think the impact levels for some of this stuff to some people are at a point where the likelihood and impact means that they are going, do you know what I need to do every morning is I need to wake up and I need to make sure the reflection in my eyeball on my selfie doesn't show my location, which is stupid shit that we do, right? Because we live in a constant state of paranoia and a constant state of fear. And it is fear, right? And especially if you're a security consultant and expert, you don't want anyone saying that you don't know what you're doing. You must be the most secure James Bond spy person in the world.
It must be perfection. I think I loved John Hammond's recent one where he did a talk. I think it was the end of last year on imposter syndrome, and because it's impossible for us to be perfect. It's impossible for us to know everything, and that's why we surround ourselves with people who know things that that they specialize in, and they have to go to where we can actually go to them and ask for questions. So I think it's always about we shouldn't be trying to set up that to be in info security that you have to be perfect, you have to know everything, because it's not possible. And there's going to be things that I write things down because I can't remember everything. And I had to go to my notes in order to remember certain commands or certain practice. Exactly. I mean, I can't remember half the passwords.
Yeah, I mean, I've got digital password managers. I've got offline ones. I've got cloud services. I've got books. I love the books. The books. I'm not kidding, right? My books for stuff that it's for stuff I care about that really I don't want getting burned.
Yeah, because I think it's important. Let's talk about that context part of it, because there's one thing is we see a lot of people online and social saying, oh my goodness, taking pictures of password books in the shop. It all comes down to the context. Is what are you putting into it? Where are you storing it? I think the difference is because I think we're thinking about 10, 15 years ago when people, used to put sticky notes on their monitor and write their passwords down, or used to keep it on the keyboard.
They still do.
That's what, and that's what, and they still do. They still do. But there's a difference between somebody putting a sticky note or having a password book sitting on their desk to somebody who's sitting at home. The average person who's it's to protect their personal stuff, and they're keeping it in the drawer in their home. I mean, how many people are going to get access to their home and be able to get into that drawer? What's the likeliness of somebody going and stealing your password book?
No, I mean, I'll be honest. If you can get here, you've got to get through me, right? And I'm not huge, but good luck. And the probability of someone getting here. I mean, Joe, what are you going to steal? Are you going to steal my password book? Or are you going to steal my watch? You're going to steal my watch, right?
I think your car would probably be a bigger target.
Yeah, I mean, it's just really odd in terms of. I find it, and I've struggled this week in a nice way. I've had such a blast. I've obviously been having fun and engaging the community and creating content and around this subject. And it's not particularly about the thing. The thing was just a catalyst and an excuse to explore.
Yeah.
The thing is around looking at risk and looking at probability and looking at threat. And like the easy thing everyone can say is, oh, your threat model isn't my threat model. Well, but it is largely, right? Like I'm just a normal dude. Okay, I work in the industry and do some stuff, so you could say it's slightly different, but I've largely got the same threats, right? I'm largely like, oh, I'll be honest, I don't generally get phishing emails, right? I don't know why. It's a bit like some of my honeypots. I think people just see Dan and they're like, shit, I'm not going after him. He's going to start tweeting about me and making jokes. I think that's it's not that I'm going to cyber them. It's just they're worried that I'm going to start taking the piss out of them on Twitter.
Yeah.
But I do think it's, I think we largely do have the same sort of the views, right? Like some of my customers do not have that. Some of them are like, that's a different story. But for me, I'm like, okay, well, what do I need to care about? What's the context? What's the likelihood of this happening? And what's the impact if it does happen? And then you end up in this really strange space. So like the list that I bear with me, I won't be able to remember it now, but the list was like, threat actors phishing, financial fraud, trying to marketing emails. I actually consider them to be threat actors.
They're trying to get your information.
If you copy the marketing text, phishers. Here's a tip from me: if you copy marketing teams, you will get a better click through and a better credential rate. But the I think when you look through, it's like the probabilities of stuff happening is like software bug. And I don't mean vulnerability, I mean failure, right? Failure of something, loss of something. I cannot tell you, and I'm not a complete klutz, but like I lose stuff sometimes. I lose stuff in my office. I can't find stuff. I've got air tags on all my kit and stuff that's important, so I can find it when it's 2 seconds away from me. I look in the fridge and I can't see the thing in front of me. You know, it's like maybe that's just because like a dude thing, but like, so I think like we've got this like hierarchy of risk scenarios and threats that we need to protect against, and then when you start looking at the stats, my stats may be wrong. I'm not God. But I start going into the likelihood of this stuff, and I'm sitting there going like, okay, so what's the likelihood that I lose something? I would say very low, but more than someone's going to steal it. I cannot remember the last time, and I'm touching, well, not wood, but touch wood. I can't remember the last time someone stole something from me, especially physically, right? And that doesn't mean it can't happen. Doesn't mean it won't happen. But like, I've got nice watches, I've got cool phones, I've got gadgets everywhere. I've not had someone steal anything from me physically ever since I got mugged at knife point when I was a kid, and I think that's the last time someone. And even then, I did try and take, like that wasn't a here you go. I think I was quite resistant, given that I shouldn't have been. I should have just said, "Here you go, mate." I didn't manage to not get my stuff nicked. That's the last time. I think I must have been 17, 18 years old. Tara's had a phone stolen out of her bag in London at once. So we've been together 12-ish years, I think. And she has had something stolen once. I had a bike nicked, but that's not really a cybery thing. So I don't think I've ever had a laptop nicked. I've never knowingly, at least my memory doesn't recall, ever having a high-end phone nicked.
I think it really also, to that point, it comes to sometimes the community where you are. If you're in a city which has got a higher crime versus a city or living in, sometimes your proximity. I remember, I grew up in Belfast, so you never left your door open, and you didn't, you always parked your car next to a nicer car, and then you wrapped chains around your steering wheel. And those were the days where you used to take your radio to bed with you at night from the car.
I was just going to say, I used to do that as well. Like take the head unit off, and then you put it in your glove box because you didn't want to take it into the cinema. Or you take it into the cinema, and the person you were with would look at you like you're a weirdo. You're like, "What have you got?" It's like, "Oh, it's my radio."
The things that we used to do in order to kind of reduce the risk. and it gets really kind of to where, a lot of the things that the media and news, what we see amplified out there is things like nation state attacks. And to be honest, most of them are stealthy. We don't hear about them. That's the thing, is that they don't want to be detected. They want to stay hidden, versus, us losing devices to the point where I think the most, for me, probably the most is those opportunistic attacks where it's somebody who is in a criminal gang and they've decided to basically move from one criminal activity into doing more digital online scams. And they're looking to do basically invoice fraud or try to get you to buy things that don't exist, that you'll never receive.
Like crypto scams, right? That's got to be
a lot of exactly those. The biggest, I think, the biggest scams is the crypto scams. Those are the ones that people are, quick money when it doesn't. There's no value that exists.
That's right. Okay, so and I've got to be careful what I say here because of the world, and someone who I've spoken to might hear me say this. People that want money quick, they get scammed. They get scammed really easily. I get asked loads, and I'm not into cryptocurrency. I'm not into NFTs. I'm glad for everyone that is, whatever. But fill your boots. But it's people that want money quick, or it's people that want games for free, or films for free and stuff like that. And don't get me wrong, I pay for. I'm lucky I get to pay for my stuff. I don't sit there downloading weird stuff. I do, but it's just that's like for actors and breaches and stuff like that. But the typical people, the stuff I see in normal people's lives, it's them getting scammed. Oh, I won the lottery that you didn't pay for, or oh, I could buy this crypto and they're going to give me like £1 billion back, or just really weird stuff that is largely financially driven, where you've said to someone, I'm going to make you money for basically not doing anything, and them going, okay. And that to me is the issue for most people. I think when we look at obviously we can't ever have 100% view, right? And I know that, right? I know that I don't know everything. I know that my view is not perfect. I don't let perfection get in the way of me at least helping, and at least, I managed to protect myself roughly okay. So and some systems that were holding some sensitive stuff, so that we didn't get anyone in there that we know of. So that's good. So I try and take a pragmatic but a realistic and a scientific where you can view, right? And it's hard. But if you're a nation state and you want to get in somewhere, you could just get a job there, or you could pay someone off to put a USB key in.
And that's what a lot of the espionage and agents have done over the years. They went and moved into countries and spent years undercover getting into organizations.
I mean, and this is the thing: who are you, and what are you protecting against, and who are you protecting it against? And it's like, okay, so if you can look at some of this stuff's online, right? Go and Google your hearts out, but go and look at we talk about operational security in the industry, right? It's OPSEC, it's everything. No one talks about PERSEC in our industry, which is weird because that's mainly what we're concerned with. But anyway, and then you go and look at the threat actors that we know about, and I'm talking up to nation state level. Their OPSEC's terrible because they don't care. What they care about is speed and effect. They don't care about, oh my God, I must be super spy. And how we think about how this stuff works, it's so different, I think, from a defender, from an attacker point of view. Even when we think about our attacker stuff, I worry. I was talking to some. It was part of the Cyber Up campaign, but I was talking to some MPs or something, and I was like, I had to turn around to say to people, "Can you please reform the laws in this country? Because I'm fairly sure that I break the law because I write software sometimes that is basically malware." Or you end up doing weird stuff with OSINT and doing stuff in threat intelligence that is.
And that's what I know in the US they've been trying to get around changing the laws because the Computer Abuse Act they're trying to change it, but it comes down to you have to prove your motive. You're assumed until you prove that your motive had other intentions. So it is improving. I think they are starting to look at these laws because ultimately Anyway, hacking itself, we always say it's not a crime. It's a way of life. It's a mind state. It's about curiosity, and we want to make sure that by default those minded people are not basically being criminalized, because ultimately their motive is actually good intentions. It's all about helping. It's about making the world a safer place. It's about using their skills to identify weaknesses and then ultimately to resolve those, to mitigate them. So I think definitely the laws definitely need to be some countries are moving that direction. Some are a bit slower than others, but I think the realization. I think when we get into where there's more collaboration between government officials and lawyers and organizations, law enforcement, and researchers, when we have all of those communications together, we definitely can move much faster. I think for too long they were in silos. They were all, shouting over the wall at each other, hoping that the other would hear or act. But we're getting to the point where that collaboration is much better. It is happening, and the realization is there.
Yeah, I mean, intent for me is a huge thing. I think people, I'll be honest, I think this is a time thing. I think there's still a lot of people that think these computers are weird, scary magic things. And the people like myself and Joe and our friends and the community, I don't think they understand it. I don't think they realize that there are so many, probably more people with good intentions than bad intentions. And
absolutely, the majority. I believe the majority of us is good intentions. I think
this goes back to the same thing.
Yeah.
The probabilities. The probability of loss is massive. Well, the probability of something happening like to this laptop I'm on at the minute, right? The likely probability, I think, would say that nothing is going to happen to my laptop. Again, if we leave it on a train and unattended, I don't think something's going to happen, right? It's not saying it won't happen. I'm just saying it's more probable it won't. And you go through and you go into this. If everyone is a criminal and there's such a high risk of everything and people aren't doing things for good intentions, the whole world would be on fire, more so than it is, right? Like, it would be absolute chaos, wouldn't it? The system
Absolutely.
wouldn't work. And so I think that there's this whole. I think people are scared or unsure about what digital looks like. I think we've got a time lag, and I do think though that people are starting to realise this stuff. For all the stuff I say about let's not try and FUD everyone to death, and let's try and communicate properly and in a way that's meaningful and that helps drive change and helps drive improvement. There is a serious side, like massively, which is some of our critical infrastructure, some of our our lives, the services our lives depend on, are at risk from digital threats. Right? That isn't me fudding it up. There are things that I won't say, but you can. It shouldn't be the way it is. We've deployed technology as a human race faster and cheaper without making it safe.
Yeah, it's been about convenience versus and I was get kind of from my side. It's you got one is convenience. Then the other thing is we talk about a lot of security by design, and I think it's a great initiative, but we really need to get to where it's security by default. It's built into it. It's something that's already turned on, and you have to, and we have to make it zero friction, where it's all about making it something that everybody can use. And I think you brought up an important point here is that we sometimes we put it cyber all into this one massive category, and we try to treat it all equally, all the same. We try to make it look like all these nation state attacks and critical infrastructure and the ransomware gangs and the everyday person who was getting phished, and we all put it into this one big category, and we're not really good at really separating it and having it properly defined into where it's applicable. And that's where the fear, to your point, is that when all of a sudden we hear about the critical infrastructure and the media bring it out, and then all of a sudden you're getting called by family members saying, should they be worried? I think that's the interpretation. I think we're having a communication problem about really that definition of what it is we're protecting. And that's why I thought it was always important today to talk about who is the real adversary. And sometimes it is us, sometimes it is a criminal gang who's doing ransomware, sometimes it is somebody who's looking to make quick money by putting some type of digital scam. But we have to make sure that we have clearly defined that who should be worried about different types of threats? Who's it applicable to?
And I think your point about communication, what is it? It's 2023, right? We're at risk. Like, the way our technology is at the minute isn't that great. But like, I fished myself this week using a new build laptop, and I used the technique that I was amazed my PDF got through, but whatever, cool. I didn't try. I got blocked on my first attempt. My second one, I didn't. And I went to do an SMB hash capture. And because I was using Windows 11 and I was using a Microsoft account, I didn't have an NTLM hash sent. So like a technique that's good, that's valid, that works across like a lot of stuff. This is to get creds, and obviously it's relating to the latest CVE for the Outlook client. It's slightly different, but you can generally send someone a link, and as long as you put it in the right level of like nesting, you can get them to send their hashes. But technologies, like, they're changing the systems. Like, it's a bit like when SMBv1 was disabled out of the box in Windows. There is a long tail on these protocols and changes.
Yeah,
and
you
when
still
you say
find a lot of them. Even internally, they remove them from the internet facing kits and stuff, but internally there's so much old systems. When if you did an inventory internally in the network, you're going to find old dusty machines from the 2000s that somebody's just having onto their desk that basically, that was meant to be decommissioned, 15 years ago, and they're still using it because some old application that doesn't support certain file formats, or that isn't made anymore. So, and they've got loads old, applications are on that machine, and they're still using it. And it might be running really, really old software and old, unpatched, and no one knows about it. I've seen even companies with a lot of advertising companies who do like graphic designs and stuff. They've got some old machines sitting there just because the file formats or the versions, old applications that have disappeared, and they're still dependent on them. And there's no visibility that they're going to change them anytime soon.
So, right, you were saying about comms, right? And communication, and this is the kind of bit that I'm like, I am obviously playing this week with the world in a jovial, good, hopefully encouraging debate and encouraging thought.
Absolutely.
But I think that part of what I'm trying to say is, if we've been telling people for 20 years to not leave their machines unlocked for 10 seconds while they go to the toilet, or to not do these things with passwords, and to if we keep telling them the same thing, I mean, I'm getting so bored of it. They must be going nuts. They probably aren't. They probably are like this. We're not listening. You weird security people. You think that like Russia or China or North Korea are going to come after me, but actually I'm Joe Smith from Hull, and all I want to do is go to the chippy and buy a bag of chips with my iPhone. Like, I think we've got a huge communication problem, and I might be wrong about that, but the stuff we talk about is not new. It's not novel. The risk landscape has changed hugely, right? The level of technology we're deploying, it's everywhere. It's getting smaller. It's getting more integrated. But I think we need to do better at communicating. I mean, if you look at some of the stuff, like we were talking about the Computer Misuse Act and stuff, the idea of breaking encryption is idiotic. Like the other one, the idea if you handle breach data, you're a criminal. That would be putting me, probably Joe.
I've had a few slaps in the hand for in the past for that.
We're talking about destroying our industry hugely, and the ability to defend and understand threats, because someone has decided to say, I think it's a good idea to make someone a criminal if they touch breach data. We're failing at comms. We're failing at comms. Right. Policies aren't right. General people and policymakers, we're failing. We're doing better than we were, maybe, and I say maybe, but we're not getting it right. And
we definitely need to know our audience better. I think that's ultimately, to start understanding really who it is, and rather than just assuming, we have to get to the point where we have to be, put ourselves in those situations and try to better understand, what it is we're trying to achieve.
And I'd like to get.
Yeah. Any recommendations you would have? Anything that you would suggest? What for people just to get started? What should be? What should be really? Where's a good place for them to go for information that would be applicable to them?
Well, in the UK, go and visit the NCSC website, because I think that is an impartial. It's got clear guidance. It's not vendor aligned. You've got the 10 steps to cyber. You've got guidance for every vertical, from critical national infrastructure through to through to personal and small business and third sector. So, and obviously it's from the UK. So, go and see the UK. But the NCSC site, at least to me, is a really good, it's sensibly grounded space. I think the thing I would tell people is the biggest risks I see are people using the same password and their passwords are terrible.
On many devices, and many
Yeah,
accounts.
and loads of people I know don't protect their phones. If you get their phone, then you've got access. I mean, this is telling everyone to set a complicated password to log into their phone. I mean, I would use biometrics, but not everyone's got a 1,500 quid phone or several of them sitting in their pockets. So it's putting in place controls to prevent against likely threats, right? The password reuse and the crap passwords is such a problem still. And that's a problem in enterprise, and it's a problem for people. For stuff like social media accounts and stuff like that, and turn on MFA, use put barriers in place against the things that you really want to protect. So think about banking apps. I'm going to actually do some stuff on this hopefully next week. But look at your devices, look at what could go wrong, and then look at what's likely to go wrong, and then start thinking about how they improve. If they do little bits, they're going to be in a better place than if they try and do everything at once. I think the problem with saying to everyone that everything's a massive threat and a risk is
it just
well, we can't defend against it.
Dilutes the real threat, the real risks.
Yeah, but I also think people say I can't do it. They say, "Oh, that £72 billion company just got ransomware, so how am I going to be able to protect myself?
How am I going to do it?"
And I think
common scenario, sophisticated, and everyone's sophisticated hackers.
Yeah, I mean, but I think it comes from this idea you have to be security perfect, and none of us are. No one knows everything, and it's like, what do you want to do? What's going to happen to you? What's likely? What are your context and surroundings do play a huge amount of it, as you said before. So I think people should just be more mindful around what they've got, what they need to defend against. I think it's important that as security practitioners that we help people in an organic fashion as well as a grand marketing fashion as well, because like I said, I do this quite a lot. Because if I'm in a taxi and they ask me what I do, I either say I'm an accountant or because of the meme, right? But if I tell them what I actually do, I get weird responses, which are, "Can you break into a bank for me?" And I get asked all the time. It's a mistake. They don't mean this, but it's just the thing, because they watch. Basically, Hollywood has brainwashed a lot of us, including me. But I think people need to sit there, and I'm like, well, what do they actually have? What's the easiest way a threat actor would take them out? And the first thing is, it's online, it's phishing, it's credential theft, it's social engineering, it's scamming, and then you've got to work your way down through that chain. If you go and follow, I've got blogs I've written with big long lists of hardening steps. I cannot ask my mum to go and look at the Windows 10 hardening guide or the iPhone hardening guide. This is not going to happen. She's going to be like, that's complicated. So it's about doing things that you can, don't reuse passwords. If you need to use a password book, right? Cool.
Just make sure you're aware where you're putting it. That's the simple thing, is just don't leave it in public.
If you use a password manager, make sure you can recover it. I can tell you this, not from bitter experience, but from obviously doing some research.
Right.
Like being able to recover from events like a lost phone. Lost phones must be, right? If I'm wrong,
the pain.
Losing your phone's really easy. And then you've got to think, if you lose it, what's going to happen to it? the worst case is someone gains access to your device and then gains access to all of your data, all of your contacts, all of your records, your stored credentials. Like that is a big problem if that happens. But you need to you need to look at where you are today before you start going, I need to, you know, have a dedicated physical security team follow you around and you know, have a consulting services team do regular vulnerability assessments on your person, and you need to take the right approach to it. So small steps, stop reusing passwords, don't use crap ones, use passphrases. Again, bolt on MFA where you can. And even if look, this is going to get me some grief, but if it means using a text message, at least in the UK, SIM swapping in the UK is not, to my knowledge, a huge risk unless you are holding a lot of cryptocurrency.
Every little step, even though they're not perfect, makes a difference. It just means you're a little bit more costly to the attacker to be successful. And ultimately, the attacker doesn't want to have high costs. they're operating a business in many cases, so they want to have a good return on investment.
I don't know. Apart from like people that are motivated for lulls, or people that are motivated for revenge, etc., or just maliciousness. Almost all of this stuff is they want to make money. That's why that's why I was like, "What are you going to steal from me, Joe? Like, would you grab my? Well, you probably would grab my phone as well. But like, are you going to take my watch? Or are you going to take my phone? You're going to take my watch, right?
It's going to be. It's ultimately it's for most criminals, it's monetary, financially focused motives, and they're going to be looking, at the most valuable thing. Typically, it's quick. It's quick as well. So we're going to do it the quickest and the least amount of effort. That's what they go after.
Well, it's like now, right? I'm not saying literally now, but let's say I could launch a cyber attack against like many to whatever the range is. I won't go trying, but probably thousands, if not more. You can probably start attacking stuff, right, with certain skills and prep and motivation. But you can fish people forever. Every day you can fish. Right, you can just keep fishing.
It's the skill of things. Yeah, the skill that of doing it digitally is so much more effective than doing it a one-to-one basis.
Yeah, I mean, this is the bit I just cannot. Again, I might just be a weirdo, so like, I'm happy to be wrong. If I'm going to go and want to make money, I could do it drinking a Capri Sun from my living room, or in my case, my office, but or as I am at the minute, in the kitchen. The kitchen's loving it this week, and I could do that, and I can attack hundreds, thousands of people. If I go physically somewhere to do something, I need to spend money. I need to spend time. I increase the risk of me getting caught massively, and then I've got to go through all this exercise of chancing something and it actually pulling it off. I mean, the probabilities.
It's so much lower.
I'm going to pass some contact details for an insurance company, right? And if anyone wants to help me, please feel to get in contact. Like, there must be science that's better than my maths, because my maths is rubbish. But there's got to be science that says here's the probability of this event occurring, because the insurance
claims, they have the claims data, and it'd be great to be able to have a little bit more transparency into where the payouts are happening and why are they happening. And ultimately, to your point, one of the things is that for anyone who wants to who's doing the criminal side, they also want to do it from a country where they may not even consider it being illegal. Doing it in a place where it's quite actually perfectly fine to do it. So
where do we see all the stuff come from, right? We see it come from India, Africa, South America, Russia, and then China, and then some stuff in Iran. Literally, we do this in honeypots, right? This isn't anything secret. I literally put maps out showing what servers are attacking, and you can bounce traffic everywhere, right? And you can use VPNs, but that isn't what we see. The data doesn't tell us that. We know we can do it. I do it. Joe does it. We sometimes will jump around, and that's in targeted, purposeful stuff.
When you want to stay hidden. That's ultimately the purpose.
If we're trying to move around and not be but if you're doing scams, Like, we watch it all the time. Even when they do use VPNs, they mess it up and they forget, and then you've got the IP of theirs. The OPSEC and baddies for the mainstay doesn't exist. They don't care. They're in countries we can't get to. They're using connections that we're never going to be able to do anything with. So I just think
the only reason they do use some type of proxy or VPN is because the ones they're actually attacking from has been blocked. That's the purpose.
Or they're doing something where they want to be in the same area as you, so they've worked out where you live.
They want to be appear local. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Dan, it's been fantastic chatting with you today. It's been way too long. We should not leave it this long again. And many thanks for all of the insights. It's for the audience. I think we really have a good insight and a good conversation on what's the real adversary. I think it really comes down to who your context of yourself is, what you do, your social sphere around you, and what your motives and interests are. I think it really comes down to that's the definition of. And we as an industry have to get better at communicating. We have to get better knowing our audience better, and not putting everything into one category, not making all attacks appear that they're applicable to everybody. We had to make sure that we categorize them, we separate them where they should be, and how who it impacts ultimately. So Dan, it's been fantastic having you on the show. If anyone's looking to contact you, I guess Twitter and social media is probably the easiest way to reach out.
Yeah, and if you can find me, you can have a cup of tea, but please don't try. Yeah,
absolutely. So, but it's been fantastic having you on, and many thanks. So for everyone out there, Dan Cardy, it's fantastic having a chat, aka Mr. Reboot, or your alias. So definitely connect out. Dan's great thought leader, sharing information, sharing knowledge, and you'll definitely get a lot of value from connecting with him. So again, this is a 401 Access Denied podcast. Tune in every 2 weeks to get the latest episodes, the latest trends, and latest news about what you can do in order, to make the world, make the people around you just a little bit safer. So thank you. Take care.